Hello everyone, I'm Akanksha. I did a very interesting project which was developing classroom furnitures for the US export market, and I'm here to share that case study with you all. This project began with the idea of involving the right set of collaborators, involving industry along with academia, along with a set of people who could add on to the project and accelerate the rate of innovation. It was an experiment that was conducted to see if innovation was possible and if innovation can be accelerated using the right set of people collaborating with the right set of people. This project started with a set of interns from SEPT Institute, Ruchika, Naman, Satish, and Nayonika. They started working on this project along with our industry partners, Mr. Manoj Dubey and Mr. Sandeep Pore. They brought in their expertise of industry along with our interns who were bringing in their design process, along with Professor Chakravarti, who brought in the synergy of academia. We started working on this project with a brief understanding of why we were doing this project, which was to replace China as one of the major exporters of classroom furnitures in the US market. There is a huge gap now. There is in India, we are excelling with manufacturing. We are trying to replace all those other manufacturers. And our industry partners started this company called Lignius, which aimed to sell or to export all these furnitures that we made to the US market. Once we understood the gap area, we also had to look at what were the opportunities, what were the criterias, and what were the scope of that project. So one of the very important aspect when you make something for the export market is the aspect of transportability. Hence, the products that we had to make had to be adaptable, modular, compact, easy to use, lightweight, and obviously they needed to have that aspect of innovation in them so that they stand out from everything else that is already available in the market. Once all the scope and everything was defined, the team moved on to the research process. The research started with looking at what are the different user interaction possibilities, what are the different ergonomics of a classroom in the US, what are the already existing products in the market, and how do we stand out or differentiate ourselves from that. Post the research, collecting enough data and understanding the market, the designers then went on to the aspect of conceptualization, which started with rough sketches, then moved on to form explorations, which were then taken further into mock ups, which were built out of everyday material, wires, cardboards, paper, etc., to just analyze or look at the form and for form realizations. Once the forms were made, the mock-ups were then converted into 3D renders, which were 3D printed to make prototypes that could reflect the designs that were initially thought of. As soon as we had our prototypes in hand, as soon as we had the physical mock-ups in hand, an interesting approach taken by Professor Chakravarti was to involve our industry experts, our industry partners in the process of designing at this stage itself. Hence, we all met with Mr. Manoj and Mr. Sandeep at this stage and tried to understand what their opinions were on the mock-ups and forms that were made. Once they visited the studio, they could explore those mock-ups, they could explore those prototypes, they could see them in physical form and could see what was going wrong, where we could change our conceptualization, what were the possibilities of manufacturing, and what were the things that we had to let go. Based on that discussion, on a very fruitful discussion, we could finalize the designs that we wanted to go ahead with and scrap all those that were not possible. Once all the insights from the industry experts were taken into consideration, we redesigned those mock-ups, redesigned those furnitures, and then went on to make technical drawings for the same, to understand their dimensions, to understand their measurements, to understand what would be the manufacturing requirements of each of those furnitures. Once we were at this stage, the next step was to visit the industry. It was essential to look at what were the possibilities, what were the limitations of the industry itself, what processes were possible, what tooling was possible, what were the materials that we could look at. Once we visited the industry, there were three aspects of innovation that we wanted to take into consideration. One was the innovation in materials, the other was innovation in machining and fixtures, and the third one was innovation in tooling. We looked at all these aspects and looked at our product and how our product could be innovating using these aspects or criterias, and looking at the strength of the industries itself into manufacturing or making the manufacturing possible. Looking at all of that and taking all of that into consideration, we again started looking at our designs differently. Since we were there at the industry, we also wanted to check certain proof of our concepts. So we got into the manufacturing aspects of different parts of our design that felt like might be a problem later on for manufacturing. We looked at the steeper angles that were there in the designs. We looked at the structural stability of what we were trying to make and if it was possible. And hence, we started interacting with different people in the factory. From the senior engineer, we moved to people who would make new tools or new machineries for concepts like this or for samples like this. And then from there on, we went on to the different factory workers who had their area of specialization and who had their own insights to add on to our design. This whole synergy elevated the process of designing and also accelerated the process of designing because we did a lot of trial and error at the same moment itself. We went ahead with the design, started with the manufacturing. Almost immediately, we realized certain things that were not possible, and we intervened then itself, changed the design, changed the dimensions, changed the angles, and redid the manufacturing on the spot. This process gave a lot of clarity, gave a lot of validation on what all designs would be possible. How can we finally take all of these to the manufacturing stage? Coming back from the factory, we looked at our technical drawings yet again. We changed those angles, we changed the dimensions, more suitable towards the manufacturers, more suitable towards the possibility of actually constructing a prototype. After changing all those angles, all those designs, we then moved ahead to printing or 3D modeling newer designs based on the insights we have collected. Now we weren't looking at the furnitures as a whole structure, rather looking at it as parts, as different elements of how they will be manufactured, where they will be manufactured, looking at which machines could do what job, and then we started deconstructing our models accordingly and 3D printing them. Once we had most of our models 3D printed, the ones that were finalized were then taken ahead to the process of final 3D modeling, final 3D rendering, and realistic rendering of how they would look in the real space. The goal from the very starting was to be able to exhibit all these furnitures, was to be able to show our designs in an exhibition conducted in the US called ED Spaces. We started looking at what were the possibilities of how we can share our prototypes, our models, our designs, and mock-ups with those people, and also again keeping in mind that they had to be carried all the way from there. Hence, the decision of making one prototype of actual size and making all the other prototypes as 1:5 ratio models was taken. We started making the models almost emulating how they would be in the real space, their parts, the way they were attached, the way they would be dismantled. It was all very realistic. And then the next prototype, the prototype that had to be of the real size, was again constructed in the factory, which required another factory visit of understanding, of taking the product, of realizing what were the limitations yet again, and looking at the final dimensions, looking at the final uh, look and feel of the product. Once we had our prototypes and the 3D models, we sent all of that to the US for the exhibition, where the models and the ideas and the concepts were highly appreciated. I would also like to share that we exhibited the same prototype and models here in IDC, here at our Design Thinking and Innovation seminar, where we had a lot of insights, a lot of thought provoking conversations with different people who were also taken by surprise on how fast we achieved the process of idea to realization, the process of idea to taking it to the market. And within the span of 4 months, we were able to achieve a physical product that could be scaled, that could be manufactured. I'm really glad to share that Ligneus has already put up all these models on their websites. They're ready to be ordered, they're ready to be manufactured, and pretty soon they'll be ready to export. This project concluded my fellowship here at IDC and was highly appreciated by a lot of people. I received my Innovation Fellowship Award from Professor Anil Gupta, who is an innovation pioneer himself, and I also received an award from our industry experts, Mr. Manoj Dubey and Mr. Sandeep Pore, who appreciated our efforts throughout this project. In conclusion, I would like to say that this experiment that we conducted, this innovation journey that we went on, was very fruitful because we understood that the synergy that comes from the industry, the synergy that comes from the academia, the synergy that comes from the factory, all of it is required, and a constant set of communication should be maintained. A lot of going back and forth, lot of visits, lot of meetings do result in something that turns out to be a viable product for the market.